The factory produces 20,000 engines a year, yet looks like an artisanal workshop. It takes 11 steps and 3 hours to build an AMG V8. The John Cooper Works Edition is the fastest machine Mini has ever made. Its 228 horsepower, 2-liter twin-turbo motor is built inside the Hams Hall facility. There, over 7,000 3- and 4-cylinder motors come to life every single day. The stations advance about every 30 seconds. It takes about 8 hours from start to finish to build a new motor. The machine's cylinder heads are assembled and tested. On another line, pistons are built up. The crankshaft is installed. New engines then receive their unique identification number. Pistons are connected. They fit the turbochargers, the inlet manifold, and engine harness. A motor is now ready to be sent down the road to the Oxford Final Assembly Plant. There, it will be delivered directly to the powertrain sub-assembly line. The JCW's 228 horsepower engine thrusts the machine from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds flat and offers a top speed of 152 miles per hour, all for about $35,000. For over half a century, the 911 has defined the sports car world, thanks to its distinctive looks, unique powertrain layout, and high-performance history.
Starting in 2016, all 911s, regardless of trim, are turbocharged. It significantly changes the character of the engine, which is so vital to the people who love Porsche 911s.
The turbochargers deliver more power and better fuel economy. Yet the danger is they can also add turbo lag.
This was a challenge, to have a turbocharged engine, but not to feel you have a turbocharged engine. So it was a challenge we had to take.
The turbocharged flat 6 engines are born one bolt at a time. The process begins in an area they call the supermarket.
Here we are at the beginning. We take the paper and start to pick the parts for this engine.
Each craftsperson collects over 300 parts before taking them to the line. On every shift, they build 250 engines.
Here we are at the beginning of the production of the assembly. Here you see the crankcase, the camshaft. We see the connecting rods with these pistons, the basic of the engine. We produce mainly with automatic stations because we need a precise process.
Workers scan every single part that goes into the engine. Part by part, the scanning system builds up a database for each engine. It's a mechanical medical record. Should anything fail, the team can go back and find out why. On this hollowed floor, the goal is not to be flawless. It's something far greater.
It's not perfect, it's really perfect.
The mission to move beyond perfection comes from a one-of-a-kind sports car culture. Porsche mass produces machines with handcrafted precision, and every year they build just under 30,000 911s. 90 miles northwest of Detroit is the Lansing Grand River Assembly Plant. Here, new machines roll off the line every 3 minutes. The factory's speed belies its complexity.
We're a very flexible facility. We build a multiple of vehicles. At the same time, we build to order. So we don't build in batches. We build to whatever the orders are.
The build begins when a freshly painted body arrives.
This is where body and weights are coming over from the paint shop, and they just enter the general assembly process.
Workers install the rear shocks and back bumper. Then they bolt the drivetrain together.
There's about 14 stations in there. It takes us about 35 minutes to run one all the way through.
They prep the drivetrain on an AGV, or automatically guided vehicle. Every 2 minutes, a fresh sled delivers the heart and soul of the Camaro to the line.
This is pretty challenging. There's a lot of moving parts. When it doesn't work, it gets a little hairy real fast.
In this area, we're putting in 10 bolts, buttoning up the undercarriage and the transmission and the exhaust on these vehicles.
Those 10 bolts help a V8-equipped Camaro SS catapult from 0 to 60 in just 4 seconds. The fast times on the track are the result of speedy installs on the floor. The unique Camaro sound falls on the shoulders of Jay Pistana.
We spent years developing the internal components developed in order to make each Camaro sound distinctive.
The team must satisfy 2 groups on different ends of the auditory spectrum. Officials concerned about noise levels, and customers who want their car to sound like a vicious, snarling Camaro.
We use this car for exhaust tuning development.
After measuring the sound, they take the data back to a listening lab.
We subjectively made the decision that not only was the exhaust a little too quiet, the induction system was a little too quiet.
An air induction system feeds the engine and increases the velocity of the airflow while also reducing its turbulence.
We siphon off a little bit of the sound, and it goes through this small 1-inch diameter tube.
While some sounds are good, others are not. To find objectionable noises, the team uses a climate-controlled road simulator that ranges from -20 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
So you want to hear the exhaust, you want to hear the engine, all the good stuff you love about Camaro, but you don't want to hear things that, rattle or sound loose.
The torture test helps engineers pinpoint the exact location of unwanted sound. The team reunites the dual-mode exhaust to remove all the unwanted rattles. Jaguar has just introduced the F-Type, a high-performance machine that caps a remarkable revival. Designers spend months refining the machine's shape, while engineers push prototypes to the limit. Drawing those lines on paper is relatively simple. Producing them in the real world is not.
Aluminium doesn't stretch the same way steel does. It doesn't do what it's told. If you stretch it too far, it will rip open.
Dr. Mark White is the person pushing the limits of aluminum. His journey at Jaguar starts 3 decades earlier.
So in 1987, Jaguar was quite a different place to what it is today.
30 years ago, the majority of automakers built cars out of steel. When Mark is hired, he's intent on switching to aluminum.
We used aluminium in modern times for exactly the same reason that Sir William Lyons used it in the 50s. Lightweight means better performance. Weight begets weight. If you save 200 kilos on the body, you can probably save another 100 kilos in the rest of the vehicle systems.
Lighter machines help both fuel economy and performance, but working with aluminum is a challenge.
It's a tougher material to work with. It's more difficult to weld.
To make the switch, the team looks outside the traditional automotive world for help.
And we decided we'd go look at the technology used in aerospace and say, could we apply that to cars? Now, nobody else did that at the time.
The decision reduces vehicle weight by over 40%. But joining the panels is still a problem because aluminum doesn't like to be welded. Once again, the team thinks outside the box.
Self-pierced rivets were invented in Australia to make ladders. So we thought, well, hang on a minute. If these guys are riveting ladders together, why couldn't we look at riveting panels together?
To connect the panels, the team uses what's called a double draw process.
We pioneered the double draw technique for aluminum. We'll do a draw and then a second draw to get the tight radiuses we want.
Jaguar's 20-year history with the double draw technique is the key to realizing Ian Callum's vision for the F-Type.
The only concern in introducing the F-Type was, would it be good enough? Would it stand up to expectations?
At the Rolls-Royce complex in Goodwood, England, artisans have spent hundreds of hours ensuring only the finest materials go into a new Wraith. Yet hidden beneath the lavish finish is a highly sophisticated machine.
You sit inside a Rolls-Royce, you're seeing handcrafted wood and the finest leather that's been hand-stitched and all these things, and all the computers and things are hidden.
Some of those computers run the 8-speed transmission. It's a gearbox that holds a surprise. It can actually think on its own.
Rather than have the gearbox purely just keeping up with the speed of the car, it's also reading the road ahead, so it knows the corners that are coming up and it knows what gear to set the car for.
The satellite GPS-connected transmission is an industry first and based on BMW's Formula One technology.
So if you're coming down a straight road and there's a perpendicular junction in the road, if you have your turn signal going, the car knows you're going to make a left turn. So it makes sure it holds the correct gear rather than maybe going into a higher gear that it would otherwise have for that straight piece of road.
The transmission is pre-assembled in the drivetrain sub-assembly area, where two workers bolt the Wraith's running gear to the massive 6.6-liter twin-turbo V12 engine. Every hour, a completed drivetrain is sent to an eagerly awaiting Wraith. The installation of the most powerful Rolls-Royce engine is both smooth and easy, just like driving the car.
A Wraith has a driving experience that's just unlike anything else. The way the engine delivers power, the way the ride quality feels, the way the steering feels.
So the car feels a little more responsive, but it still has the flying carpet feel that you're driving on a cloud.
The air suspension reacts almost instantaneously. It makes adjustments 60 times a second.
So if you were to take yourself from the passenger seat on the left rear side and jump across to the right-hand side, the car's already sorted itself out by the time your backside hits the seat.
While occupants are isolated from the majority of the high-tech systems, there's one star that stands out.
Okay, this is the creation of our Raid Starlight headliner. So this is one of the a real popular feature for our customers in the car. It gives them that starlight twinkle effect in their roof.
It takes 1,340 fiber optic cables to replicate the night sky in over 14 hours.
They are delicate, very delicate. If you bend them too far, they'll break. You've got to be careful cutting them so that you don't, when you're cutting them, you don't cut the leather. The headliner's the last thing you want to do.
All that twinkle adds up. The Starlight option adds over $12,000 to the sticker price.
This is one of those things that if anyone else did it, it would be a kitschy gimmick. When Rolls-Royce does it, it's fabulous. It is so cool, especially the fact that you can determine what stars are over your head. Come on, that is the coolest thing in the world.
Heads spin when a 4C goes by, even in northern Italy, the home of the supercar. When building a sports car with supercar technology, it's the little details that matter. The amount of handwork required to build the body is extremely time-consuming, but it makes each car special. Each day they produce just 18 units.
It's hand-built, it's hand-done, and that limits the amount of cars that Alfa Romeo can build. They just don't have the capacity to build more.
Great paint starts with great prep. The operators spend 20 minutes applying the first coat. Then, it's time for a pair of robots to get in on the action. They take just 11 minutes to paint the remaining 85% of the car. Finally, after more than 40 hours of manual labor spread over 6 full days, a body is ready to return to Modena and enter the final assembly line. There, over 200 craftspeople will bring a 4C to life and hopefully help rejuvenate one of the icons of Italian motoring. For over 50 years, Ferrari and Lamborghini have battled for Italian supercar supremacy. One is synonymous with Formula One. The other is known as an extreme machine. What they both share is a liberal use of carbon fiber. Now, Alfa Romeo, the third oldest Italian automaker, is pinning its latest comeback on the very same elemental technology.
It absolutely is a automotive trickle down. You know, Ferrari has been developing carbon fiber for a long time, but those cars start at $250,000.
Sure, today, carbon fiber is a material that gives you the higher strength related to the weight. It's used in aircraft, it's used in racing car. It's almost indestructible.
Although the cost of carbon fiber has come down, using it as a structural component in a modern sports car is still a very time-consuming process.
Making a carbon fiber tub is very complicated because it's done by hand.
Carbon fiber could be the material in the future. Right now, this is a very labor-intensive process.
To manufacture the 4C's carbon fiber chassis, Alfa turns to the Adler Group in southern Italy, where the state-of-the-art tub begins as a pile of 40 carbon fiber sheets.
It starts with fabric. You can imagine like braiding, no? Like your grandmother does at home. It's a little bit more high-tech, but at the end of the day, it's like this. And then you cut parts and pieces of it.
Craftspeople trim pre-defined patterns using an air-cutting table. The rough pieces are then hand-glued onto a mold using a resin that's vacuum sealed into place. Next, the entire tub is put into an autoclave, which is essentially a large oven. Then, it's baked for over 4 hours to set the glue.
At the end of the day, it's coming out of the oven. It looks like one piece, but it consists of many, many layers of carbon fiber.
The finished tub weighs just 143 pounds.
Carbon fiber is a really interesting material. The reason why you see it only in really expensive cars is because they spend a lot of time making sure it's as lightweight as it can be, but also as strong as it can be. The fact that you can get it in a car that costs less than 100 grand is nothing short of a miracle.
The oldest car company in the world is now taking the sports car fight directly to Porsche's doorstep.
You think about them like two boxers. One is methodical. The AMG is that brawler, just gets inside and just starts digging at the body and just hits as hard as it can.
Mercedes-Benz has figured out that the most competitive market is just below the real crazy supercar market.
One of the rather unconventional parts of the AMG is where the engine sits.
Tobias and his team decide to put the motor in the front of the machine. It doesn't sound unusual, but how they do it is.
First of all, you have to start with some layout work. You know, it's the dream of a car guy.
In most traditional front-engine machines, the power plant sits above the axle, not behind it.
This is a real true front midship engine car, which means the engine's completely behind the front axle.
Placing the engine behind the front wheels centralizes the mass and puts the focus on handling.
Ideal handling comes from a driving situation where you have the center of mass in the car is right by the driver or slightly behind the driver.
The next critical choice is the transmission.
The major decision was to continue with the transaxle concept, which is great from proportions and weight balance of the car.
It's part transmission and part axle. The layout's critical advantage is that it moves a large and heavy drivetrain component to the back.
We have a transaxle, so we have a gearbox at the rear axle. This gives us the weight distribution.
Tobias Moers and his team have defined the layout of the GT, but it still needs a sexy exterior in order to stand out in a very crowded supercar division. 1,400 people work here every day. Yet just one person builds an engine from start to finish.
One person is responsible for every last nut and bolt in that engine and putting it together.
AMG stands for one man, one engine. I'm one of these men, and I'm very happy to do this job.
Every builder signs their creation like an artist autographing a masterpiece. The factory produces 20,000 engines a year, yet looks like an artisanal workshop. It takes 11 steps and 3 hours to build an AMG V8. The build starts by swinging the block onto a special trolley.
First, you put the crankshaft into the crankcase. After that, you turn it, put the pistons in the crankcase.
8 very special pistons, each installed by hand.
Well, it's a bit difficult to put the pistons into the cylinder. I have to make sure that everything fits.
Those cylinders are as unique as the pistons. Each is coated with a nanoslide treatment that makes the metal twice as hard as a conventional engine. The coating is so effective that Mercedes uses it in their Formula One engines. Next, the timing chain is added. Cylinder heads. And finally, the 2 turbochargers. Without liquids, the finished engine weighs just 460 pounds. When you're building a high-performance sports car, every ounce matters.
It's a great honor for me to work here. We produce performance products the whole world wants to have. I'm a little part of something big here.